European colonialism in Africa birthed the current political order in most African countries. Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, Portugal, Spain and Italy were the major European powers that were involved in the complete colonization of Africa. Colonialism is the act by which a country or state exerts control and domination over another country or state. The 1880s marked the beginning of the colonial period in African history. While Europeans and Africans had established relationships in a variety of settings for centuries, the 1880s marked the turning point in European attitudes towards Africa. For decades, scholars have scoured through various historical documentation attempting to find a definitive answer to the question posed, why did Europe colonize Africa? We will find that in all probability there is no one definitive answer to this question. Their reasons ranged from economic, political, social and religious. A period between 1881 and 1914 became known as the Scramble for Africa, a phrase used to describe the European colonialism in Africa. European colonizers were able to attain control over much of Africa through diplomatic pressure, aggressive enticement and military invasion. In fact, these countries competed with one another to see who could attain the most power and growth. At the height of colonization, only Ethiopia, the Dervish state and Liberia had been untouched by European settlers. In 1884, the Berlin Conference formalized European colonization of Africa. They met to discuss the division of Africa, without Africa being present. Indeed, they shared Africa like a piece of cake. By 1900, the majority of the land was divided up amongst 7 European colonizing nations: Britain, Germany, France, Belgium, Portugal, Spain and Italy. There were several different reasons why Europe colonized Africa. Some of the prominent ones are: first, European countries fought to take over African countries mainly because of their natural resources. The demand for raw resources to supply the Industrial Revolution combined with the loss of profits from slave trade were two of the driving economic factors in the colonization of Africa. The result was a scramble for resources. European powers noticed that many of these raw materials happened to be abundant in Africa. Second, another reason for the colonialism in Africa was the need of the African population, which served as cheap labor for European industries. Third, new medicinal discoveries only encouraged colonization. After quinine was discovered, colonists were less susceptible to malaria and Europeans gained a stronger foothold in Africa. Fourth, the inter-European power struggles and competition for dominance led to Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Portugal, Spain and Italy competing for power in European politics. At the time, these countries believed that their power could be shown through who owned the most territories over the surface of the world, including Africa. Thus, Africa was shared and colonies were placed to help ownership. Through their colonies, countries would find excuses to increase their political reach and power. For example, when the missionaries would call for protection, European nations would use the opportunity to establish a point of power in order to compete with their neighbors. Fifth, desire for exploration. Prior to the wave of European colonization, the geography of Africa was generally misunderstood. Much like the adventurers who had traveled to Asia and North America, many European explorers set out to determine the physical makeup of the African continent. When these explorers returned, they would tell tall tales of riches, and these exaggerations stimulated colonization even more. Sixth, a large motivator behind African colonization was the desire to spread Christianity throughout the world. European colonizers brought the Christian faith through missionaries. Seventh, a key ideology behind imperialism, which in turn informs colonialism, is the idea of racial superiority or cultural superiority. European colonizers thought that they were doing a favor to those living on the African continent by introducing to them the European way of life, even if it came at the cost of destroying established societies. In conclusion, colonization of Africa brought devastating results to the African continent that it will probably not recover from. It ensured that the African continent would always be dependent on their European colonial masters and will never be self-sufficient. What a sad story it is for Africa.